4th grade Earth Science, a unit for the multiple intelligences. My goal in creating this unit is to create a unit in which all children will reach their academic objectives. I plan to do this by following Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, coupled with Bloom's taxonomy, or classification of learning objectives. And along the way I will incorporate various technologies that will appeal to specific intelligences. In this unit, students will learn about the 3 different rock types found on Earth, namely igneous rock, sedimentary rock, and metamorphic rock. Students will also learn how all of these rocks come together in the rock cycle. As part of this unit, we'll also take a look at changes in the Earth's surface that are often related to the rock cycle, such as fast changes like earthquakes, volcanoes, and landslides, as well as slow changes such as erosion. On day 1, we introduced the unit through the use of a PowerPoint presentation on Earth Science. Students will also have the opportunity to visit various stations with different rock samples and record their observations in their brand new Changing Earth journal. The activities of today especially appeal to kinesthetic, naturalist, and interpersonal learners. Day 2 will introduce igneous rock to students and conclude with a remember activity that will appeal especially to interpersonal and visual learners, in which students will collaborate to label using post-it notes various images corresponding to previously taught vocabulary and concepts. On day 3, in an activity that will appeal especially to kinesthetic and naturalist intelligences, students will analyze and categorize various igneous rock samples as either being extrusive or intrusive. As a final product for this part of the unit, students in groups will research using the internet and create a PowerPoint presentation which they will present to the class. In the presentation, they will identify various igneous rock formations and explain their formation and characteristics. Day 5, students will be introduced to sedimentary rock. Key concepts and vocabulary will first be taught through a PowerPoint presentation. Then, in a remember activity, students will have the option of either drawing a picture that relates to the key concepts and vocabulary or writing a poem which includes the same concepts. By doing so, students will be able to express themselves in the intelligence that best suits them. Day 6, an activity that will appeal especially to interpersonal, visual, and naturalist learners, students will apply their knowledge of the various characteristics of sedimentary rock to collaborate on a poster that could be used as a reference to distinguish between the different types of sedimentary rock. On day 7, an activity especially designed for kinesthetic learners, students will use sand, gravel, clay, as well as other tools and materials to build a model that will demonstrate their knowledge of the sedimentary rock formation process known as cementation. The 8th day brings an introduction of metamorphic rock. However, students will first examine several metamorphic rock samples without knowing they are metamorphic. They will then record their observations in a journal. This activity is especially appealing to verbal and interpersonal learners. The following day, in an activity especially suited to visual and verbal learners, students will design a pamphlet describing the characteristics of 3 specific kinds of metamorphic rock and how they are formed. The pamphlet will be constructed using art supplies. Students will also be able to utilize word processing software and internet searches in order to add printed off information and pictures to their pamphlet. Day 10's activity combines the musical and visual intelligences. Students will design a presentation to illustrate their knowledge where they will add imagery to the rock cycle song to create a music video using iMovie or Windows Movie Maker. On day 11, in an activity geared for the naturalist intelligence, students will illustrate the sequence of events leading up to the formation of a particular type of rock. Students will demonstrate the sequence through collecting materials and presenting them in a scrapbook. Day 12 will consist of 2 activities. First, with the assistance of a computer and a speaker system, the instructor will introduce and teach songs about the rock cycle that will reinforce key vocabulary and concepts from throughout the unit. Students will then participate in a remember activity in which they physically place a card with a key vocabulary term on a diagram of a landscape that relates to a part of the rock cycle. On day 13, students will be given a rock sample, from which they will have to hypothesize as to what type of rock it is. Students will then be tasked with writing a short pen and paper essay in which they make logical arguments as to how they reached their hypothesis. Day 14 offers students an opportunity for interpersonal learning, as students will visit various learning centers created by the instructor detailing how certain rock types' characteristics make them useful in many products people use. Students will take notes of their observations in their journals. Day 15 gives students the opportunity to propose a way in which the characteristics of a particular rock might make it useful to people. They will then present their idea to the class by creating an advertisement handout of their new product using word processing software. An activity geared for both verbal and visual learners, students and groups will research using the internet and various pre-selected texts the processes of a particular slow change. They will then sketch out a landscape on a large piece of butcher paper which illustrates that change. On Day 17, students and groups will view and complete a web quest dealing with changes in the Earth. Throughout the web quest, students will examine and assess the impact of some of the fast changes related to the rock cycle, such as earthquakes, volcanoes, landslides. They will examine the impact not only on the Earth but on human life as well. Students will then type their responses to the questions in reflective journals found throughout the web quest and email it to me. On Day 18, students will create a working landslide model and follow the scientific process to carry out an experiment. This activity is especially geared for logical learners. However, the hands-on nature of the activity also makes it great for kinesthetic learners, as they will be building a model and carrying out a hands-on experiment. The students will record their hypotheses and the results of the experiment on a pre-made worksheet. As we near the end of our unit, in groups students will conduct further research and evaluate the impact of a particular geological event on both the Earth and human life. They will then videotape their assessment in the style of a news report, or they can create a podcast in the style of a news report. Finally, as a culminating project, students will begin the process of creating a rock collection presentation. The presentation should include an actual or virtual rock collection with rocks from each stage of the rock cycle. Students will have to explain both how they identified the rocks in their collection and how those characteristics reflect the processes that formed them. Students will have the freedom to decide how to present their collection. PowerPoint, an interactive learning center, and video are all acceptable formats. Finally, on the last day of the unit, students will present their rock collection presentations to the class. As I reflect on my unit, I ask myself if I have fulfilled my objectives in creating a unit that incorporates what I have learned throughout my coursework and gives each and every student the opportunity to learn and express their knowledge in a manner that best suits them. In my unit, I incorporate each of the intelligence in Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences several times, ensuring that students have the opportunity to express themselves in a way that is best suited to them. Furthermore, by creating activities using the different learning objectives along Bloom's taxonomy, I am able to assess whether my students will have a complete understanding of the material that they can apply in a variety of ways. Last but not least, I attempted to include a variety of technologies that would specifically appeal to a certain intelligence, such as scrapbooks for naturalist learners, pen and paper activities for verbal learners, art supplies for a variety of activities for visual learners, post-it notes for interpersonal learners, journals for intrapersonal learners, and music for musical learners. As I created this unit, I developed a better understanding of how an instructor can develop activities that can appeal to a multitude of intelligences at once. Whereas before I thought it was nearly impossible to include all intelligences in certain subjects. Perhaps most important is I have learned how technology can be used as a tool to achieve the goal of incorporating a variety of intelligences into a lesson in an engaging and creative way. By using the skills I have developed in this project, I believe I am far more prepared to take on the challenge every teacher faces. How does one reach every student in the classroom, giving them the best opportunity to succeed?